me, when I look at humanity, it's interesting because I think anything can change in a moment, because I've seen how fast things can change. Ultimately, the goal is your vibration becomes your protection. That's the gift. You have got the gift of hearing guidance that saved your life. Oh, no, I'm not a psychic, because it conflicted with the Catholic upbringing, and you can't be psychic and Catholic because that's evil. We could heal. We could make a decision. We can make a choice, right? And I've seen a lot more of that.
I'd like to welcome to the show Oliver Niño. How you doing, Oliver?
How you doing? Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to you, man. I haven't had anyone with your skill set and experience, life experience on the show before. So regarding energy work and spiritual activation. I want to dive into all that stuff. But before, man, what was it like before you went into all of this? I mean, I'm assuming you weren't a small child going, I'm going to be a spiritual activator when I get older, or work with energy when I get older. At what point did this journey begin for you?
I never thought I would be here because my background is entrepreneurship. Like, I've been like a internet marketer, business owner, like building companies, selling them, for over 20 years now. And so to me, that's my first love, right? So the second love was just growth, personal development, and finding something to better my life. And to me, energy healing was one of the things that, I tried out. I've never heard of. I had no context. Nothing was working at that time. And I'm like, sure, let me try it out. And I was very skeptical, left brain, analytical, still am right now. And it was the one thing that worked when everything else didn't work. So to me, it kind of was like, what is this? How come I've never heard of it? And how is it defying all the laws of how I think things should be and how fast things should happen and what's possible and what's not possible, right? So to me, my first introduction to it was because I wanted at that time I felt like I had a block when it came to growing one of my businesses, and I could not for the life of me figure out how to get through that, experience an energy healing, and that took me to levels that I've never experienced. And I was like, okay, whatever this is, I just got to learn more about it, because if it can do this in this amount of time, then what am I missing, right?
So when you kind of known in a certain space, in the entrepreneurial space and building businesses and things like that, when you started to come out as a quote unquote spiritual activator, how was that received by your colleagues, by your friends, by your family? I mean, I have to believe that was like, dude, you've lost your mind? You've gone completely woo woo on me? How was that?
I was what I call a closet healer for over 10 years, right?
Oh, wow.
Because for me, I didn't want to risk it. I was like, I'm known in this community. Like, I'm networking, I'm making friends, I'm meeting people, I'm doing business deals, right? And to me, back then, it was law of attraction was not even the thing, right? And so all this stuff was so new. I was feeling out people where they were and seeing how open they were, seeing if they're using certain buzzwords, and then I would be like, hey, on the side I do this, I did it for free back then because I was just like, I was so passionate about how it works. I would just be gifting sessions, and what would end up happening is somebody would try it and they'd be blown away. Next thing you know, they would refer a friend and their friend and friend. So that's kind of like the first 10,000 sessions were literally, it was almost like a secret of like, hey, do you know what Oliver does? And they're like, yeah, no, do you know what Oliver really does? And it was like, became this like secret code, and people would kind of know it was a private thing. And it was just a wild time of like living a life as an entrepreneur, but hiding in the spiritual closet of like, okay, I don't want to really be judged, so I'm just gonna do this underground in a way. And it was very fascinating. And to me, it was one of when I look back, I was like, I can't believe I pulled that off.
What exactly do you do? What exactly is the energy healing? Like, what are the things that you were giving all these sessions away for free? What were they?
Now I do a lot of just training people how to do it, but back then it was like, I would meet people after I had this awakening. Have you ever been to Sedona before?
No, but I've heard of it, of course, and it's very energetically charged.
Yeah, so I went there and I had this experience. I was on top of this vortex, right? And vortex are very popular in Sedona. They studied it because it apparently has so much concentrated energy. in a location. It's deeply connected to the energy of the earth, and I thought it was baloney. And I took a little hike there with one of the guides, and I sat there for 20-30 minutes, and it was the wildest thing. I was sitting down, and I would just like have all these different shapes, and images and things that were coming up, and I thought I was hallucinating, because when I opened my eyes, I was like, my gosh, I'm seeing all these like different like lights and shapes and things around people. So I was like, I'm definitely needing more water. It's the desert, it's Arizona. I'm seeing things. So, and that went on for about a good week of just like, I thought I was just crazy, like, seeing things, like meeting people, and like, I'm like, how do I know this about them? So from that experience, it kind of brought on in stages. But the first stage was that I would meet people, and I would just know what they were struggling with, or where they were blocked, of like, okay, they have a block in their heart. Oh, they've got a block in their ear or whatever, right? So for me, I was able to know that they had stuff, and not necessarily know what to do with it, but just know something was up, right? And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then when it progressed, like, I started like feeling it within myself as well, and being able to like remove the energy blocks on myself. So I tried that for a bit, and I was like, okay, I might just be making this up. So I was like, called friends, family members, and I'm like, hey, I want to try something on you, right? So I started off with people that I trusted, of like, it's gonna sound weird, but I want to try something on you. Are you open to energy work? And I would do that, and and people would be like, telling me stuff about either they're physically like have physical relief and feel better, or emotional, or nothing happened, but in that week something crazy happened and was related to what we worked on, and I was like, there's something to it. So I started doing that for me at the beginning, to gather data that it worked. It wasn't just a fluke of like just me or somebody else. So that's for me. That's why when I did the first 10,000 sessions, I was just mainly curious of like, does this work? Will this work for everybody? How does this work? Does it work if somebody doesn't believe it? Does it work better if somebody believes it, right? And to me, it was just my mind gathering data of like, oh, that's the pattern. That's how it works. Okay, they don't have to believe it, but if they're open to it, even if they're skeptical, it still works. You don't have to have belief, but you have to be open. And it taught me a lot about just how energy works, that it completely bypasses the mind. Like to me, it's kind of like, it's very autonomic and automatic, to where your mind doesn't have to, really believe in it, because the way energy works is that it works outside of the mind, whether or not you believe it. And then people typically, when they see something amazing, they're like, oh, I guess that works. And the mind eventually kind of like buys in. Accepts it, but it's not the first. It doesn't have to champion it from the beginning,
So explain to me what you're talking about in regards to energy and energy blocks, for people who don't understand what flows through us. I mean, anyone who has ever heard of the term chi or gi, the chi energy, that runs through us, and acupuncture, talks about these energies that run through the body. Is that correct?
Yes. The way I think about it is like, energy is like, we all produce energy, all of us, right? And even what we call auric field, right? The scientists call the bioenergetic field. So they're able to start measuring things in the spiritual community has known for a bit, right? So the way I look at it is, we produce energy, our thoughts produce energy, our emotions produce energy, our decisions produce energy. Our, they even have these machines. Have you heard of biofeedback machines by chance?
Oh, I've done one. I've done them. I've done some biofeedback sessions. It's pretty mind blowing.
It is, and the thing is like, and the thing with them is, they are able to measure a lot of things. So they're able to measure emotions, and the way they're able to do it is they put people in a room and have them focus on like feeling angry or feeling sad or feeling happy, and they measure the frequency, variations of that emotion, and they're able to be like, okay, anger produces this much, or is this the frequency of anger. So they've done that with thoughts, with emotions. They've done that with a healthy liver, a sluggish liver, healthy cells, so they've gone through an enormous extent quantifying everything with energy. So to me, the way I look at it is, we all produce energy, whether we like it or not. We all produce energy. So when you work on the energetic level, you can affect everything that has or produces energy, right? So to me, like a simple example would be like people that walk into a mall or a crowded area and they go from feeling calm and peaceful to all of a sudden overwhelmed or anxious or just kind of a little bit off, right? So you
Hmm.
have those, and then you also have folks that are like, okay, some a random name or a person's face pops up in their mind. They're like, why is this person's name popping up? Next thing you know, they get a text, an email, or a call, or they bump into
Hmm.
them, right? I've seen that happen, or situations where people are like staring at the back of someone's head or whatever, or their back of their body, and the next thing you know, the person turns around like someone's looking at them. So to me, the way I've seen it is like energy like affects everything, and it's this invisible communication that we have that we do unconsciously, right? And it's like oxygen. Like you don't see it, but it's there. It's happening. It affects everything in life. And to me, it's been the most efficient way to work on something because if I'm working, let's say, energy blocks, and the way energy blocks are, I look at them as we don't have them, but then life happens, whether your environment affects you, a traumatic life event happens, generationally or gestationally, something's passed down. Next thing you know, these blocks are formed that kind of throw you off how you're naturally supposed to flow and to be, right? And
Hmm.
now your body has to compensate for it, and you can't go manifest what you want, or you can't have the perfect health, or you can't have the abundance because now it's having to deal with the blocks. And all your energy is going to these blocks that are in here. That's, for me, I think they're stopping you.
So would be an example be if I have been told my entire life by my parents, let's say that making money is extremely hard, or
Yep.
rich people are evil, or these kind of ideas, if on a
Hmm.
subconscious level it's in my psyche, would that block me from obtaining wealth if I truly wanted wealth or abundance in my life? Because you just have this kind of this energy of this negative association with it. Is that kind of what an energy block is?
It could be. It could. To me, it could be from 'cause everybody is. It's different. So for some people, it's self-talk and thoughts. It's the biggest because the thought produces the energy, and
Hmm.
the energy is what to me
Blocks.
attracts
Right.
attracts or repels things in life. So to me, it's like the thought produces energy, the emotions produce energy, your decisions produce energy, your intentions produce energy, and that energy is what's affecting your life in the here and now, right? So to me,
Hmm.
it's like when you remove the energetic um, thing that holds it up, those thoughts aren't as powerful, right? But yes, I've seen it for sometimes it's people's thoughts because they're like, shoot, if I make money now, then I might lose love and connection from mom and dad because that's what they don't like, and I don't want to lose love and connection. So subconsciously, I'm gonna keep it at this level. Or if they think that money takes a while or you have to work hard, then I'm gonna take a while and I'm gonna work hard and I'm gonna match their rules perfectly unconsciously because love and connection to me is more important than not than than everything else, right? And then you have people that have it based on like when I grew up, like my dad went through bankruptcy and lost everything, right? So now
Hmm.
for me, that's more of an experience of like, okay, that's my relationship with money. You have it, then you lose it, right? So that's more of an experiential thing. So to me, there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different reasons blocks can happen, but a lot of the times blocks can also be like you're around a lot of people and that's the status quo and you're just like and just like they say you're the average of your five closest friends and it can affect you positively or negatively your environment as well if they're all like oh yeah we don't do that then you're just unconsciously like a lot of times like also pumping the brakes in that manner. But yeah, to me, energy blocks, you can have, let's say you can have it in your heart, right? That could be, oh, eight limiting beliefs in there, like, five traumatic events, like, seven things that were, seven self talks that are not nice or whatever. And they're all just like clumped in an area. So to me, when you release that, you're working on things that you don't and things that you might never know, but it doesn't matter because you just feel all of a sudden you either feel light or the relief, or all of a sudden you can just move forward in ways that you felt like it was hard to do in the past.
How can someone recognize energy blocks within themselves?
So for some people it is like physical. They like if they walk into a room or someone walks in their room and that person's negative, they feel it in the pit of their stomach. They're like, ugh. For some, it's a very like physical experience. For some, they know there's like, yeah, there's just something not right with that person. They're off. So for me, in order to recognize energy blocks, at first you got to start attempting to become in tune more with energy and how it works, your energy, right? Because what ends up happening is people are gonna start realizing that, oh shoot, I talked to this person and I'm uplifted and I'm fueled. Or I talk to this person and I'm drained and I'm tired and I'm now on a roller coaster emotionally. So once you understand how energy works, first, then you can be like, oh, there's patterns in here. Then I think the next level will become energy blocks, right? But I think the initial thing to understand is just like, how does energy affect your life, and how do you interpret energy based on your unique gifts? How are you more of a knower and you just know? Are you a feeler where you're feeling it emotionally, to where if someone's feeling something, you're feeling the same emotions and your body's releasing the same hormones or chemicals like you had it? Or is it more like a body thing where they're in pain, you're in pain, right? So I think at first it's like becoming in tune with that, of like, how does energy, and people will be surprised because a lot of times we have this active growing up as kids. It's just that we've forgotten about them, or we turned them off, or we dim their abilities because no one was there to teach us about it, or it was weird and you want to get ostracized.
So when you were saying that, it sounds almost like what the animal kingdom does, where like if there's a pack of wolves, if there's a sick wolf, they will stay away from them. If there's someone ill, or even if a person with an illness comes into a group of animals, some of them will come to comfort it, but sometimes they would, depending on what kind of sickness it is, they will just walk away because they can sense it, they can feel it. And you've seen that? Have you seen that in your work with just animals and stuff?
I've seen it with animals. They're probably one of they're more perceptive and energetically in tune than humans. You'll see it with dogs, like they're going to start barking at someone that has negative energy, and like and if someone has positive energy, they're going to be around them. You see it with horses as well, right? I mean, I've seen it so many times. I've had it to where we've had back when we were living in Dallas, we were in this high rise and we had two dogs that were extremely potty trained. They do not make any mess. And then my friend who was visiting us landed, and the moment he walks in the door, and this guy has a very anxious energy. Both of them, out of nowhere, they go potty, right? And I thought it was just a fluke, till he came back several months later, and they had no messes, and the same thing and to me, that's what dogs do. They purge because they know what energy is. So to me, there's different ways of purging. Physical purging is one of the fastest ways to release negative energy. It's why when you have food poisoning, you're throwing up, you're expelling it as fast, and then you feel good because the toxins are out. So the same thing with energy is like, whenever there's something that's just like, wow, this is an intense amount of negativity or toxicity that they're not used to, then they have to release it, right? So I've seen that more with animals, but it also happens with humans as well. But animals are way more in tune naturally, is what I've seen.
What can you do to protect your energy? Because like for me, anytime I walk into, I don't like large crowds. I don't like going to a concert. That's like, in a mall during Christmas. Horrible, because there's so much energy, so many people walking around. I have a sensitivity to it, so I feel those energies. I've been shown a couple of things to kind of protect my energy, especially if I'm going to walk into a meeting or someone or in a group where I know there's that one toxic person who just sucks the energy right out of the room. I'm trying to protect myself from them. Is there any techniques that you can give the audience on how to protect their energy when they're in those kind of environments?
Yeah, so I think it definitely comes in stages. So the first stage is protection is an active thing in the first stage, and at higher stages, it becomes an automatic thing to where you're not thinking about it as much, because ultimately the goal is your vibration becomes your protection, and you probably experience or people that are watching this, times in their life to where they're such in a high vibration to where nothing can throw them off. Problems are people that typically could affect them. They're like, and there's times to where, you're in a low vibration to where, oh gosh, like, normally you can deal with that, but you just can't. It's just so much because you're in a place where you're low vibration and your fuel tank is empty to where you're just like, you can't, right? So to me, I look at it as a vibration base, and I try to do things that kind of land me in a high vibration most of the time, 80% of the time. So 80% of the time, I'm not worried about protection, right? But when I started out, 100% of the time, that's all I thought about because I would go out there and it would be debilitating. So I'm like, I didn't want to go to malls. I didn't want to go out. And I thought being cocooned in your house saves you, but it doesn't, right? Because when I realized that, like, the energy, there's this one time I remember, I had grown a business, one of the businesses, and I wasn't worried about money. I didn't have any, anxiety around money. I didn't have anxiety around bills. I just that wasn't the thing I was worried about. I was worried about employees and all that, but not about bills. And all of a sudden, this fear and anxiety about bills hit me, and I was having these thought patterns that I normally wouldn't have. And I'm like, this is odd. And it went on for 20, 30 minutes, and I was looking around, being like, what was the trigger? What was I exposed to? Did something happen? Because typically there's a cause and effect, and I couldn't find anything, and it was driving me crazy. And then my mom calls me, and she was worried about the anxiety about bills, and worrying about it. But she's been thinking about it probably for the last 30 minutes and thinking of me, and then she finally called me, and I realized, oh shoot, even if I don't go out to the mall, it doesn't matter because energy affects me, even if she was in another state. Right. So when I realized that, I'm like, okay, I can't really hide from energy. I just have to master it. So there's different ways. I mean, a lot of times you can do protective shields. Like I teach that a lot of imagining light coming down and putting you in like a bubble or a pyramid, right? And for a lot of people that works really, really well, and they just figure out what color works for them, because for some it's white, it's purple, it's gold. They respond to different colors, and then for some pyramids work better, or for some they'd like to be in a bubble, for some they'd like to be in a whirlwind, and then they find a specific combination, and then they try it out, and then they feel calm, and then they go to the mall and they're like, wow, I don't feel extreme anxiety. And the goal really, to me, the goal isn't complete blocking it, because the way I look at it is you just have to know what is too much, because it's like a pressure cooker, and there's a threshold that you can handle. And sometimes if you can handle this and you have just a little bit over it, that's what throws you off. It becomes unbearable, it becomes too much. And if you can get it a little bit lower, then you're good. So to me, it's not the complete, I gotta block everything and anything, because if you do, then you block out the good as well. It's like, what is too much, and can I lower it? And then over time, realizing that you can grow to where your too much can be higher, to where now your capacity and threshold to deal with stuff is more, right? So to me, it's like you can do shields. Some people, at the beginning, I did a lot of crystals, right? To where I would actually have crystals right now. I would have a crystal, like a dark one, black tourmaline or smoky quartz or obsidian or shungite, because the black ones, what they do is they become your first line of defense. Instead of the energy going to you directly and affecting your energy centers, it goes to here. So it goes here, but this thing gets full. So at the beginning, I had this, and then I would have a bracelet next to it. That's a citrine. So citrine is like a crystal that carries the energy of the sun, and it does not. It's one of the few ones that you don't need to clear, but it can clear anything that's near it. So to me, my system was, okay, I have this that absorbs, I had a bracelet or a necklace or in my pocket that absorbs negativity from everybody else. Then I had this that cleared this fella. So it became a system of instead of me feeling everything, I would feel just a little bit, but it wasn't debilitating, right? So at the beginning, it's a lot about active stuff that you do. And all you're looking for is the relief, can you walk in the mall and instead of it being level 10, can it be a level 4? Can it be level 2? I mean, sometimes you're going to luck out and it's going to be 0 or 1, but can it be manageable so you're not debilitated and can you see a difference? And you're going for those, you're going from for those like extremely significant but changes, but not completely removing it, because that can come. But I want to get people used to just get it to where you're not frozen and debilitated and and just spiraling. Just get it to where you can do it at first and notice the difference, right?
So when you mention crystals, crystals have always been fascinating to me because we haven't really spoken a whole lot about crystals. Can you explain what they do in regards to energy, how people can be helped with it? When you start getting into crystals, there is science behind it, but it is
Yeah.
associated with so much new age woo-woo stuff
Yeah.
that it's not taken seriously by many people. But there is science. I mean, we use crystals
Yeah.
every day in our technology.
Oh yeah.
It's part of what we do. So can you talk a little bit about that and how it works with energy?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're right. There's a lot of science, and if people want to research it, there's a ton of it on crystals, and to me, crystals. So I want to speak on the short term and long term. Long term, the goal is realizing that anything that a crystal can do, anything an external tool can do, you can do, right? But doesn't mean the tool is bad, right? So I went from a phase of like dependent on crystals to not using crystals to now I'm like, I have it because it's like I can use it. I don't have to use it. I know my power, and I also know its use, and I'm okay with using a tool because by using a tool, it's what it's here for. So for me, the way I look at it is, crystals are. It's kind of like if you look at nature. Nature has a way of helping us. Nature has a way of healing us. That's why when you go out there barefoot, you're grounding. The earth grounds you. If you're walking by the ocean, you get negative ions, right? If you're, you have different herbs that are there that are meant to help with as remedies for different ailments, right? So nature has a lot of these healing properties. You go out there in the sun, you get vitamin D, and then you go in places where there is no sun, and it's like and it's gloomy. People feel depressed, right? Because the sun has a way of clearing our energy as well. So the way I look at it is crystals is the same thing. They're nature's way of helping us, whether whether to feel good, to access, clarity and intuition, for protection, for different areas of life that matter to us. Typically, crystals hold a consciousness, right, that make it easy for you to remember and tune in to that. So if I'm holding a selenite crystal, right, and the selenite crystal typically holds the consciousness and the vibration of higher realms, angelic realms, the higher frequencies, then to me, by being around it, I'm just like, ooh, I'm tuning into something that I normally don't, and I can now be like, that's what it feels like. And then eventually you'll be able to do that on demand without really having a crystal. But to me, it reminds you of something that you might not even forgotten, but you're just not attuned to, and you can't put a word to it, or you can't easily access it because you just haven't tried it. It's like trying a new food. You try it once, you're like, that's what it tastes like. It's the same thing. Now you know what it tastes like. The same thing with crystals. It's like, I might be like, hey, you should have it so that you feel abundant, but you're like, what does abundance feel like? Then you're like, oh, okay, that's a unique frequency. So to me, it's a trainer. It reminds us of these different levels of consciousness and vibrations and frequencies that are available to us, but we might just not been taught or we're not familiar with,
So when you were mentioning about keeping your energy at a high frequency or a low frequency, and I think most people vary. It depends on the day,
Yeah.
depends on the situation, depends on moods, all that kind of stuff. But I've heard stories, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. I've heard stories of these master yogis that that they're vibrating at such a high frequency that when they walk in, if someone even is 50 feet from them, they
Yep.
become intoxicated by this blissful energy. It's almost like a drug, and that's why there's people that like to be around them and all that kind of stuff. I've heard
Yeah.
those stories. What is your thinking about that? What have you heard?
I absolutely true. I mean, the way I look at it is the very so Sedona does that, right? So Sedona has vortex points, and they're known to have either a masculine energy vortex or a feminine energy vortex, right? And if you step on an area that has a feminine energy vortex in Sedona, time disappears. You're cradled in love. You're like, oh, this is amazing. You're cocoon. It's like unconditional divine love to where you could do no wrong and you can just, it's like if somebody has shattered pieces, they just all come back together, glued, and you just feel intoxicated, like what you said, very, very blissful, right? And it's ideal when you're working through a lot of the toughest stuff is to have that energy because now it's easier for you and faster for you to heal through it. Now, the masculine vortex, completely different, right? It is like whirlwind, and it's all the crap that's shoved under the rug that you may be aware of, that you're not even aware of, that just all come together all at once, level 10 in your face, and it's all there, and it might throw you off because it's too much. But that's what it does. It brings everything so you can deal with it, right? And so to me, Sedona isn't just a place. People can house that energy. So, we've been able to do that. Like, so for example, when, my wife, when people go into her workshops, she houses the divine unconditional love, and people walk in and they start crying. People walk in and they start shifting. They're having breakthroughs on an energetic level because that's what that energy does, right? And to me, like I started off my journey being very masculine, being able to house that masculine energy. So when people's stuff would come, people would be purging, right? Like they would have the same purge, like they would, if people did psychedelics, they would have the same purge or plant medicine that they would when I do energy work at the very beginning, because I was very much purge fast, let's bring it up, and that was my intention. And then when I learned how to do what my wife did and kind of blend in a little bit more of that unconditional love into it, it was like, it was fast, but it was smoother. There wasn't that much of the purge or the pain. It was just like, it blended in. So to me, I feel like those two energies, they both exist within us. The masculine energy and the feminine energy, the yin and the yang, and it's in the harnessing and the mastering of that. And it depends, because some situations you would need, the masculine energy to go and shift things. And for some, it's like divine feminine, unconditional love. And for some, it's the blend, right? So to me, I feel like they're energies that can be honed, can be harnessed, can be mastered.
A lot of that we've been talking about, it almost sounds very three-dimensional, very earthbound stuff that we've been talking about. What is all of this energy work, implications of it spiritually on somebody's life? Because you mentioned it, so yeah, spiritually, yeah, because you call yourself a spiritual activator.
Sure.
What does that exactly mean, and how does that connect to our spirituality and our growth as a soul?
At the very beginning, you're removing blocks. That's the goal, because to me, having blocks are like having the emergency brakes on while you're driving, right? In the Maslow hierarchy of needs, you just got to address, the things that keep you in survival and survival and safety and trauma response. And to me, that's what blocks do. And when they're removed, you elevate a little bit higher, and then there's the spiritual gifts, right? And that's the other part that I work on is like, in Sedona, like one of the gifts that came up is I would know. Actually, I didn't know back then. I know now, but my wife pointed it out to me. It's like everybody that you're around, within like a few days, something weird would happen, and their gifts would activate. Whether someone would be around me, next thing you know, they're psychic, and they dream about something, and it comes true, and it never happened, before our encounter. And then that same thing with channeling. That's the same thing with all these other gifts, hands-on healing. When my wife said that, and she's like, everyone around you, like, after that incident, that's what's happening. And I'm like, that's odd. And then she's like, you're a spiritual activator. So to me, that's how gifts work. Because my mom, for example, growing up, she would dream about things that would happen, and they would happen every single time. And when I eventually, like several years ago, I told her, Mom, you're a psychic. She's like, oh, no, I'm not a psychic. Because it conflicted with the Catholic upbringing, and you can't be psychic and Catholic because that's evil.
That's the devil.
But the disowning of the gift, or the distancing, doesn't stop it from happening, because the gifts don't occur in the mind. They come from somewhere higher. So somebody can completely be in denial and still have the gift. So for me, that's what happened is I had that, and I wasn't aware that was happening. And that's when I was like, let me become aware of this and figure out how this works. And I did become more intentional, so I could, I could at least do it on demand. If somebody wanted to help activating their gifts, then I can do energy work on it. But what I realized is that spiritual gifts, we are all born with them, right? You see it with kids. It's just that it either becomes unconscious, we dissociate from them, we run away from them. I meet a lot of people. I help a lot of first responders and law enforcement officers, and you won't believe how many times somebody walks into a crime scene and they tell me that they can taste the drug that somebody overdosed on, and they would tell the coroner, and the coroner would be like, "How did you know?" Or some friends of mine. One of my best friends is a under sheriff here, and they were doing somebody's. It was like 15 years ago. He was leading the SWAT team, and there was a robbery in a store, and then they went to the store, and they're like, "It's so and so." So they went to this guy's house, the whole SWAT team, and he was there, and he heard his voice out of nowhere that said "duck," He's like, "What?" And he didn't even flinch. He just did it, and he had a rifle bullet grazed his hair, miss it by an inch, And to me, I'm like, that's the gift. You have got the gift of hearing guidance that saved your life. And a lot of times it's not always the voice, it's a feeling, it's a nudge, it's a dream, and that's one form of it. But the way I look at it is our spiritual gifts. When we have blocks, it's hard for us to really become aware or access them because we're still dealing with the blocks. But to me, the gifts are where it's at. It's how we manifest. It's how we get guidance. It's how we're guided in life. It's how we know what to do, what's good for us, how to avoid pain. So to me, that's the ultimate, one of the ultimate levels is like stepping into your gifts, embracing them, learning about them, and going beyond just the blocks that we have.
Now, I wanted to talk to you about, we've been talking about individual energy blocks.
Yeah.
But I believe that humanity itself has its own energy, collective energy. Sure. And I'd love to hear what you think the energy blocks are of humanity, and what are we working through? How are we expanding our consciousness? Where we're going? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting when it comes to collective, because I feel like anything else, if you study people that have, whether it's the Jesus or the Buddhas or the ones that have come before us that have radically changed the just how we are, say, as humanity. If you look at them, it's one individual in their full essence and light, moving humanity forward by leaps and bounds. So the way I look at it is, there are people that are held back by societal blocks, country consciousness or world consciousness. Mm-hmm. There are people that they're just in a field to where they're affected by that. Something happens, politically, or something happens in the world, they're always affected by that. It's always a big thing. And then you have people that have transcended that, and their main goal is to raise humanity forward, evolve, and they're ahead of their time. And I think that's, to me, is what I've seen over the last several years, is just a massive shift in consciousness, to where you're having people that are going through the awakenings. They're waking up, and they have to choose whether they want to wake up and stay where they are, but there's now a choice to where there are people that are now breaking free from all these limitations, and the people that are staying, and you're seeing more of a division in frequency, right? But the cool thing about that is, once you have enough people that wake up, it starts tilting in their favor, because when you have people that wake up, if you think about it, if you have individuals that choose their full light and they can change the entire world or billions of people's lives in a one, but if you have collectively people waking up, then the energetic ripple effect of that is, whether somebody wants to wake up or not, when you're surrounded, by an environment through osmosis of people who you're connected to who are waking up, it will affect you, right? And that's why in the last several years you've seen people through COVID become more sensitive than others to energy. All of a sudden, empaths are waking up, and they're like, "Why am I?" And all these gifts are coming up, because it's what happens when the collective energy wakes up. It's like it wakes you up whether you like it or not. You can fight it, you can write it, but it happens. So to me, what I've seen is like over the last several years, there's just this collective wave of healing, this collective wave of triggers coming up to be healed, this collective wave of things that are put in front of our faces, so we could heal, we could make a decision, we can make a choice, right? And I've seen a lot more of that. So to me, it's interesting because the group collective energy is healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is being pushed towards awakening, healing, leveling up, and that doesn't look pretty at times because part of healing is purging. Part of healing is releasing the old. Part of healing are things coming up that are painful, right? But if you have no context, that's what healing is, or the process. You just think it's bad,
I'm going
or
cra-
it's
I'm
dark.
going crazy, or I'm going crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many people right now that I've noticed that are doing these awakenings, and they didn't want it. It wasn't. They didn't go looking for it. They're not reading books. They're not going to Sedona. They're not going to Tibet. They're not on a search, but yet they're waking up. And a lot of this crap. It's kind of like your food poisoning analogy earlier. All that's coming up, and it has to be expelled out, and you have to work through it to get it out of you so you could be able to move on. But a lot of people just truly have no idea what is happening to them. So if you can give any advice to somebody who is going through this awakening,
Yep.
this leveling up of their frequencies that they truly did not ask for, how do you deal? What advice do you have for them for dealing with it?
Well, here's the biggest thing is most of the time people don't know it's what they asked for, right? When people are like,
Right.
yeah, people don't know. People are like, I want love, or I want more money, or I want to feel good, or I want to find they say something that they want in life, or they say, enough is enough. I'm tired of being broke. I'm tired of being around toxic and narcissistic and negative people. I don't want this. People don't realize that their word, what they intend, is powerful. Intention is so powerful. Think about like prayer is a form of intention, and all the stories about someone sick and a loved one praying for them, and then they get spontaneously healed. And that's not even placebo. That's someone else praying for you, and you're healed based on someone's intention. So people forget sometimes the power of spoken word, whether it's like, I'm done with that or I want that, right? So the way I look at it is someone's like, I'm tired of all these, toxic relationships and not having love. And next thing you know, they're going through an awakening, and triggers are coming up. They're doing healing mother wounds, father wounds, self-talks, all these different things. And they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, you're clearing the thing that has been causing you to attract the thing that you don't want, that you just mentioned that you don't want in your life. But because no one explained it to you, you're looking at it from this time frame, not realizing it sucks in this time frame. But in this time frame, if you zoom out and look at the process, this is exactly what I asked for. It's exactly what I prayed for, right? So a lot of the times, the missing context brings pain to people because they don't realize the thing that's happening. The next step to that is exactly what they're looking for. They just had to go through that to get to what he just said they wanted, right?
So where do you think humanity's collective energy is going towards in these next 5 to 10 years? Because to be honest, Oliver, from 2016, I'd say 2012 it started, but 2016, but specifically 2020,
No.
it has been a roller coaster of energy. From 2020. This is the weirdest decade I've ever been a part of in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. It seems like it's starting to speed up and get a little bit more chaotic with all of the things happening with natural disasters and politics and money and health and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Where do you feel its energy is going?
It's interesting because I've actually worked on a lot of different levels. Like I work with, individual people, collective, presidential families. I do that because I try to understand what the cause and effect is. I try to understand what moves the needle for humanity. And what I've realized with working with people at the highest levels and people that are just like me, everyday people, is that the power is with the people, right? The power to change your life isn't external, it's within it. And I've seen people at the darkest of times, externally, live the best lives. And they change everything in there. You look at them, you're like, they're lucky. How are they so happy? How are they so abundant? How is everything happening for them? And I've seen the opposite. I've seen when there's the best of times and people are just suffering, right? So to me, the biggest point I want to make is once you get into a place where I feel like you've healed to a point, and I'm not saying like, because a lot of times when people hear healing, they think it's a lifelong thing. To me, healing is a phase. You do it to a place to where you're good. You're no longer in fight or flight. You're in a thriving place, in a place to where you just like you feel good and you're empowered most of the time, and that's good. And when you're there, you realize that a lot of the things happening around you affect you only when you lend consciousness to it, and it becomes your world, your focus, and you realize that you have no say in it. Whereas for me, when I look at the external world, I realize, okay, what's my contribution? What is my role in all this stuff? And when I realize, okay, the way I can make an impact is realizing if I help people heal, if I help people step into their gifts, they're going to be more empowered. They're going to feel more free. And if we have a world of people empowered and free, then that wouldn't be the case externally. Right. So I look at it more from a root perspective of like, I feel like the reason why we're at where we are is because we've stepped away from our power. We've given it away. We don't realize that we're creators of our own reality. We think everything's outside of us. But if you fix that, then it doesn't matter. Like you would live in a world where everyone's empowered and awakened, or majority are, and it'll be a very different world. So the way I look at it is it goes beyond politics, it goes beyond terms because you don't know how fast humanity shifts. But to me, the play becomes how do you get humanity from giving their power away to having them realize that they do have it within. And if I can do that, and that's my specific purpose on Earth, and that's the only thing I can control, right? So to me, when I look at humanity, it's interesting because I think anything can change in a moment because I've seen how fast things can change. And the way to change it really is not, to me, it's not external. To me, it's completely internal. And I don't think people realize the power because I've seen it happen. It happened in my own life, and I've seen it happen with other people, is when somebody changes, they affect everybody around them. Their family members, their environment, everybody. It's like a ripple effect because if people can affect you negatively, I think the thing that's super underrated is people don't realize you can affect them positively. You can be that person that walks in the room and everybody feels, oh, you just brought in love and energy and bliss. And I just feel you can be that. But a lot of times people think I can't be that because I'm afraid to go out there and be affected by everybody else, that they don't see that there's another part of the story. So for me, I'm focused on how can I get people to do that? Because and I've seen literally people come to me saying, Oliver, I'm here because I want to heal my husband. I want my kids, my family. I'm like, forget about them. Trust me, for 90 days, just work on you. See what happens. And the 90 days, they're like, oh my gosh, my husband's better, my family's better, everyone's better. And I'm like, that's the power. Because when you choose your own healing, you become the potent environment for your family. So if they can affect you negatively, guess what? You can do it as well through energy. And they're all shocked because they're like, I didn't even have to heal them. They're better, but how is that possible, right? So to me, that's the goal. Is like if I get an individual to wake up, it affects more than just them, right? And that's something that I can control in a way because that's my output, right? So the way I look at it is I don't think it's time-based. I think things can happen much faster than we think. It's just that, it's with time speeding up, we just have to focus on the right things that move the needle.
When you say time is speeding up, can you explain what that means? Because I understand what you mean. I feel it. We all kind of feel that things are just moving at the speed of, they're just moving so fast. I always use the example of, AI. AI was a thing that was talked about in the Terminator films and, these kind of things. And all of a sudden, it's in our lives. It's integral part of our lives now in a way that the internet was when it first came out. But from where the internet first came out to where it really took hold of our lives was years. AI did it in a matter of months. So
Yeah.
that's an example of speeding up. What do you mean exactly when you say that?
I mean, everything's speeding up. Like you're right. Like AI is speeding up. You had back in the day where you had the modem. It's like
Yeah.
it's like 5 minutes, and I'm like opening up a picture. It's like this is like floppy disks and all this stuff, and now it's fiber optic. So if I look at that, between that to advances in telephone technology, to advances in like people's in money, like back in the day, it took them this long to build $1 billion company, and now you have $1 billion companies being born faster than you ever imagined. It's just the speed at which humanity is operating. But I think the other level to that is we're becoming more energetically aware, as well as a society, to me, humanity is becoming more energetically aware. And when that happens, things are faster. Because now when somebody talks, when somebody says something, when you see somebody on TV, not only are you hearing the words and seeing what they're saying, you're feeling the energy. Therefore, you're processing more information than you're used to. Therefore, you're getting decisions faster. You're getting affected faster. It moves everything. So I think with the awakening, people are becoming, whether you know it or not, it might show up as energetic sensitivity or extra sensitivity to negativity. Is like we're now processing more energetically. Therefore, we're having to process more data that we're normally used to, right? There's a lot more now to it. That's why people can feel the truth. When somebody says something, it hits them faster now. They can feel it, or if they're resisting it, they're like, you can feel there's a resistance. But I feel like we're in a day and age now to where, people, like you said, are awakening. So with that awakening, it awakens all these other senses that we're not typically used to. It's kind of like seeing those videos on Facebook, the viral ones where you have that kid that's not able to see well or hear, and they have the glasses for the first time and the hearing aids, and they're like, whoa. It's a lot of information to process, and we're getting used to that. So, and it speeds things up because what normally takes this long, now it's here, but you have to go through the phase of getting used to the processing all that overwhelming information and knowing what to do with it, what's real, what's not, right?
Growing pains, essentially. Growing
Exactly.
pains. So humanity is going through massive growing pains right now.
I think it's heading in the right direction. It's just that it's just like the awkward teenage, like puberty, growing pains. Your hormones are kicking in. Your knees hurt, and you're just cranky, right? We're going through that as a collective is what it is, and we don't know we're going through that. We don't know it's because we're growing. We think it's because we're deteriorating. We're thinking like, oh, you're in your deathbed and this is the worst. No, you're going through the teenage growth. For me, it's like your teenage growth spurt.
There is something that I've felt, and I've spoken to a lot of spiritual mystics and things like that in regards to this energy, because it fascinates me that it seems like the Earth itself, and if you want to start getting into the astrological connections with other planets and the energy that comes in from other planets and so on, it seems like we're being bombarded by energy that it's leveling us up, leveling us up, and it's overwhelming for a lot of people. Hence, why so many people seem to be going a little loony. While we see it. I mean, there's things that are happening now that are horrific that happen, and I'm like, when I was growing up, 70s, 80s, you just wouldn't hear about these kind of things. It just didn't exist. And now it's become more and more commonplace because people are just can't handle what it's coming in. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think there is so much in the last 10, 15 years of beyond this planet frequency affecting our planet. And I think it's causing it to shift at a higher vibration, to level up for sure. So a lot of veils that are being lifted, a lot of things are being made apparent, a lot of things that are honestly like before, like never saw the light of day because that information is like maybe a few people know, and now it's like everybody can access it. So to me, it's like it's very interesting. I do, and I know it because people come to me from different parts of the world, and I'm like, the things they're coming with at this period of time, they're all the same in the last 2 weeks, and I'm also feeling energy out, beyond this world that's like like this new wave that's just hit the world, and it's affecting everybody from all over the world. They're not even talking to each other, but the pattern is the same, right? Whether they call it, Mercury's in retrograde or full moon or whatever that is, I'm like, those things happen beyond a full moon. They're happening at different times. I feel like when the planet needs it or whatever, but there's multiple energetic interferences that if you thought about it individually, it won't make sense. You're like, why is this happening to me? This is crazy. But you don't realize millions of other people from all over the world are having the exact same thing and are being affected by something, because it's not so much a you thing, it's a global thing because of external energy affecting.
I mean, and COVID was a perfect example of something that affected the entire planet. The
Exactly.
entire. I don't remember ever in the history of man something collectively, all at once, stopping the planet, stopping humanity from moving forward for a second. Even if it was a few weeks that we all kind of shut down and were forced
Yeah.
to stay in the house, it was still something so global, so powerful that it had to do something to us.
And the amount of people that woke up during that time, that would say, like, being at home and being introspective and being with, myself, and the realizations that happen. I mean, there was a lot of, like, there's a lot of loss, a lot of that stuff that went on, that, that people, but there was also a lot of awakening, that when I look at it, I was like, there were a lot of lessons learned during that time, that, people were like, wow, I'm glad I learned that, or glad I experienced that shift or that realization, or they're now able to focus on healing something that they weren't able to heal in the past because they have the time and the space. So to me, it definitely had some really surprising benefits for a lot of people as well, as far as like the growth and the healing, from the spirituality aspect.
Now I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests, Oliver.
Go over it.
What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
My answer is very different from my wife's. Her answer is like, I feel God in everything that I do, right? God's presence. For me, I've always been a growth oriented person, right? So to me, fulfillment, I'm not really with my goals that I have, how grand it is, of like, hey, I want the whole entire world to heal. I think fulfillment to me is in feeling that at every moment, like, I'm just like in on track, growing and evolving to hit what I feel like I was born to do. Like, what I'm doing is fulfilling. The actual act of purpose for me is the fulfillment. Is like living every day being like, am I doing purpose? Great, I'm fulfilled. So for me, it's the act of living that on a daily basis.
If you had a chance to go back in time and speak to little Oliver, what advice would you give him?
Ooh, it's a good one. I'll probably say everything that's happening now is happening because all of your wildest dreams and even the things that you can't even dream about is being prepared for you.
How do you define God or source?
God and source to me is the life force that connects everybody on the planet, everybody on in the universe. It's what breathes life into us. It's how our bodies are able to self heal. It's the unifying energy that connects us, that binds us, that I feel like it's in all of us. And collectively, it's like we have the potency of God in every single cell that we can access, but it's also in the collective. So it's in the individual, it's in the collective. It's the unifying energy. It's like the oxygen for our being, for our souls. It just unifies us, that we all have.
What is love?
Being able to look at a person, in front of you, and being able to choose to do or facilitate what's in their highest and best good for for their life, whether it's something that's pleasant or painful, but being able to facilitate what's in the highest good for their soul.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
I think life on this planet is to come back to wholeness and remember everything that you came here with, so that you can use it.
And where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing in the world?
Yeah, I mean, they can check out my site, spiritualactivator.com. And I post a lot of stuff on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, just like a lot of free content there. So if people are like wanting learn more about techniques and tips, like I don't hold back. A lot of them are like free out there.
And do you have any parting messages for the audience?
I think the biggest thing is realizing that for a lot of people, it's realizing that the stage that they're in right now, what you're experiencing, it's like you don't realize how close you are to what you want. And I always thought about this. Like a good friend says, people are sometimes 2 to 3 feet away from gold. They don't know it, or they're standing right on top of it, and they're like, "Oh, it's never gonna happen for me." And they just give up. They tried all their lives, and and they give up because they can't see it, they can't hear it, they can't feel it, they don't have any context. So to me, is realizing that you didn't come this far just to get this far. If they're here listening to you, it's because their soul's probably like, you need this, and it's gonna take you to this next level. And to realize that for a lot of people, they're probably way closer to what they want than they think. They just have to go a little bit more, and then they're right there. So don't give up. Just realize that they're being led somewhere, and that it could happen. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen today, right?
Oliver, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man, and thank you so much for the information and for the great work you're doing to awaken this planet, my friend. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate it. This is one of this to me is like such a. It doesn't even feel like a podcast. It feels like a conversation between friends. This to me is like perfect dinner conversation, right?
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.